It looks like 6 o'clock to me.
Yeah. Is
Okay.
everybody here? I think everyone's
Yes.
here.
Welcome, everyone, to the February 15th edition of the Soquel Creek Water District meeting for 2022. Our second meeting, actually. Still with no rain in 2022. And we are going to have a roll call, and then we will be going to closed session after that. So roll call, please.
Director Daniels,
I'm here.
Vice President Christensen,
Here.
Director Jaffe,
Here.
Director Lather, here, and President LaHue.
Here as well.
Thank you.
We are going to go to closed session. Are there any public members that would like to speak on closed session?
President LaHue, there's one member with a hand up.
Okay, go for it.
Ms. Steinbruner, your mic is available.
Good evening, this is Becky Steinbruner. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Good evening, and yes, the weather change is really something. So I just want to speak to the litigation that is continuing regarding the modified Pure Water Soquel project, and just let you know that I was very disappointed that your board refused my requests, very simple requests for settlement that would have resolved all of the litigation. It was termed a global resolution, I believe, by Charity Schiller. And I was surprised and very disappointed that your board would not even do that. So it was in your court. You had a chance to really stop the litigation with simply providing a final anti-degradation report and proof that you are working with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife for meaningful, enforceable mitigations, and you refused. So that's very disappointing to me, and I have no choice but to continue with the litigation, and I will pursue it with vigor.
30
I
seconds.
was heartened, thank you. I was heartened that Judge Volkman recognized that the district is charging me 10% interest on filing fees that you don't even have to pay, and that I should have been given 45 days to pay, but was not. So the debt, two of the debts are now resolved, and I look forward to trying to continue to work with you.
Thank you, Ms. Steinbruner.
Is there anyone else that wishes to speak on closed session?
There are no other public members currently attending, President LaHue.
All right, thank you, Becca. So let's, we'll be going to closed session, and then we will return at 7 p.m. to this meeting, okay? Okie doke. Welcome, everyone. Welcome back to the February 15th meeting, Soquel Creek Water District. It is 7 p.m. Looks like I'm looking, do we have Dr. Jaffe? We have Rochelle. I'm looking for. Oh, there he is. Okay, good. All right, so we have all the board members. And so we do not have any public hearings tonight. Does anyone on the board have any items they'd like to remove from consent agenda?
Nothing from me.
Okay. Bruce Jaffe,
No, I do not want to remove anything.
Rochelle? Okay. And Carla?
I think I'm unmuted. Okay, good. I just was gonna pull 4.6 for a last review of the COVID-19 procedures at the
Okay.
district.
And then if you don't mind, I'd like to just pull 4.16, 416, so we can discuss the strategic planning meeting just a little bit. It didn't have the times on there, and I also wanted to, since we have a meeting 3 days later, I just wanted to just discuss that. So, okay. So 4.6 and 4.16. Is there any public comment on the consent agenda? Any raised hands?
I am not seeing any raised hands.
Okay, then I'll entertain a motion for consent.
I'll make a motion to approve the others.
I'll second it.
Okay, been moved and seconded, and roll call, please.
Director Daniels,
Yes.
Vice President Christensen,
Yes.
Director Jaffe,
Yes.
Director Lather,
Yes.
and President LaHue.
Yes,
Thank you.
great, thank you, unanimous. So as has been the custom, to take up those items at the end of the other items. So let's see, oral and written communications. Do we have any public members that have anything they would like to present here?
We
Anybody?
have a raised hand.
Pardon?
We have a raised hand.
Okay,
Steinbruner.
go ahead with that then.
Ms. Steinbruner, your mic is available.
Thank you. This is Becky Steinbruner. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. I don't think I heard whether or not there was any reportable action from the closed session.
Yes, sorry, I did forget to say that. So I'll give her a few seconds, but there was no reportable action. We just gave direction to staff. So go ahead.
All right, thank you. I would like to let your board know, perhaps you already do, that Santa Cruz County LAFCO Director, Mr. Joe Serrano, will be doing a comprehensive sphere and service review this year of all of 6 water in the county, and the report is tentatively set to go to LAFCO in August. So I'm very much looking forward to that. I think Mr. Serrano does an excellent job, and I will look forward to his report about the water service and financial status of different water districts, which it will include Soquel Creek Water District. I would also like to bring to your attention that the Santa Cruz County Water Advisory Commission has an ad hoc committee that is working now to develop a plan for the state's response of be compliant with SB 552 that requires each county to provide a drought response plan, drought resiliency plan. And I'm looking forward to that ad hoc committee's efforts expanding to include other members of the public and hold public meetings. One of their largest responsibilities is to develop recommendations to the state for consolidation. And I hope that your district will take a hard look at whether it would be a wise matter to consolidate Soquel Creek Water District with the city of Santa Cruz to provide a more regional aspect of water management and use. I'm heartened by the water rights
30
environmental
seconds.
report. Thank you. I'm heartened by the water rights approval by the City Council in December. And I will close by saying that I am disappointed with Soquel Creek Water District for dropping the ball on stormwater recharge projects, one of which the district had grant money to do and has just let it go by the wayside. I think that's not a good policy, and I hope that you will reverse that course.
Thank you, Ms. Steinbrenner.
Okay. Is there anyone else? Any board members have comments on?
Nothing from me.
Nothing from Bruce Daniels? Bruce Jaffe? No? Or you're just muted?
Nothing for me.
Okay. And then Rochelle? Anything? Carla?
I'll just take note of an article that's been now it's expanded into all kinds of news media about the mega drought in the Southwest. The findings from last year modeled reinforce the knowledge that we are in a mega drought punctuated by rainfall, periodic rainfall, and it's predicted last year was the driest year since the year 800. So it goes back, they are able to study this and use that data in modeling to identify this mega drought, and they expect it to go for 7 more years at least. So it has direct repercussions to our Pure Water Soquel project that appears to be amazingly timely at this time, at this moment.
Okay.
Oh.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up. All right. Then I don't have anything myself. So the next item would be reports, and we have District Council. Josh.
Thanks, President LaHue. I actually was going to talk briefly about some of the COVID updates, and in particular the mask mandate, which expires tomorrow. But I know we pulled that item from consent, so I'll kind of defer that. But along those lines, did want to remind the board that AB 361 is not linked to the mask mandate. And is actually linked to the statewide declaration of emergency. And as long as there's a statewide declaration of emergency by the governor, the board's permitted to continue to meet remotely under the relaxed guidelines that we're currently doing. And that statewide declaration of emergency is currently set to expire at the end of March, and would anticipate more updates from the governor's office as we get a little bit closer to that date. Happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions for council? Okay, seeing none, we will move to administrative business. Item 7.1 is the conditional will serve. Who's taking that one?
I am.
I thought that might be you, Tosh.
So this is a proposed single building that will be, they're proposing to locate it at the intersection of Cabrillo College Drive and Park Avenue. And it is a somewhat modular construction where each unit is built off-site, and they're basically 1-bedroom efficiency units. And they're proposing to build 36 of them, all in one 3-story building. And they have paid their water demand offset deposit of 10%. And because they're so small, each unit is relatively low. I think the total water demand offset is a little less than 5, or about 5 acre feet. 5.1. And we're working with the developer to understand how each unit is supplied with water, and there's some significant challenges they're telling us they face with individually metering each unit. So this might, come back to the board at some point to discuss that further. But for tonight, it's just approving a conditional will serve letter. They may be online. Let me look. Maybe not.
I did not see, no, I don't see any other attendees.
Okay. So they may come back later for further discussion about individual metering policies. That's all I have to report about the project. Unless you have any questions.
Questions? Bruce Daniels?
None from me.
Okay, Bruce Jaffe? No? Okay. Rochelle, where'd you go? Let's see your picture.
She's frozen.
I have to say something. Uh-oh, I'm frozen?
No, you're better
No,
now.
you're not. There you
Okay. No, I don't have any comments.
are. Okay, all right. And Carla?
I do. I just have a question. What is these are really tiny units. And is this a retirement community or something? Do you know?
Low income, I think.
It says low income, but it's really small, like for single people or something. It's a very tiny spot. And so I was just wondering about that, how they would individually meter those. I guess we'll find out later, I suppose. But yeah, it seemed like a very unusual place for one because it's not really particularly close to public transportation or anything. I don't know. It was just, but anyway, it's just ancillary questions. So I don't have any other questions.
Okay, I mean, so what I understand is they would be coming back with any like ways that they feel like they can meet or not meet the exact requirements of individual metering, right?
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay, and we would have an opportunity to decide whether that's okay or not.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, right now we're just giving the conditional or not. We're voting on the conditional will serve. So if anybody wants to make a motion.
Yeah,
I'll
and
move.
President
Wait,
Lahue,
Taj?
we actually have to take
Oh,
public
we have
comment
public comment,
first.
sorry.
Oh, right.
Wait, Taj, go ahead.
but what I was going to say is part of the list of conditions would be to individually meter each unit.
Right.
Oh.
And then that'll stimulate the conversation that we will most likely come back and discuss with you guys.
Okay, great. Okay, so any public comment?
We have one public member.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Ms. Steinbruner, your mic is available.
Hello, this is Becky Steinbruner. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. I recognize this address because I also participate in County Board of Supervisor meetings. It is one of 3 locations and facilities that will be funded by the county for homeless transition. That's why the units are so small. It's a rather unusual configuration too, because according to the County Boards of Supervisors information, I can send you the link to that. It was a couple of weeks ago. All of the occupants of this homeless shelter will have to access the shelter through the parking lot of the commercial building adjacent. So it's a very odd arrangement, and that's why the units are so small. It's basically a shelter for homeless and homeless in transition. I do not know who will run it. It is on the board's agenda. It was put forth to try to get a grant to have the county buy it and run it. So that's what I know about this project. I think it's also a rather interesting spot.
30 seconds.
Because it is quite removed from the transit line, although within walking distance of Soquel Creek. So that is what I know, and I will be interested. I don't see anything about landscaping included at all as part of the water demand offset. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great, thank you for that additional information. Appreciate it. Is there anyone else? No other public members?
There are no other public members.
Okay, great, thank you. What's your pleasure? Any motions from the floor there?
I'll move to approve the conditional will serve a letter for this.
I second that.
Okay, moved by Carla, seconded by Bruce Jaffe. Roll call, please.
Director Daniels,
Yes.
Vice President Christensen,
Yes.
Director Jaffe,
Yes.
Director Lather,
Yes.
and President LaHue.
Yes. Great. All right. So let's move on to item 7.2, which has something to do with this type of thing. And I think Alyssa might be the one presenting it if I was to guess. Am I right?
You're right.
There we go. Hi, Alyssa.
All right. Hello and good evening, everybody. Item 7.2 is an item to give the board a chance to look at one of the changes regarding individual metering that we're proposing as part of our revision to Ordinance 1701, which is the ordinance establishing rules and regulations for water service. We've been working on changes to that and hope to bring it back in a couple of weeks. And there's no action required tonight, but we just wanted to bring this at this time so that the board has more context for this change proposed and has an opportunity to provide any feedback prior to the formal consideration. I'm just going to really briefly go over what the change we're proposing is. The current wording of Ordinance 1701, if you scroll down a little bit, there is a strike through what we're proposing, but the current wording is that all residential dwelling units and non-residential units constructed after August 20th, 2002 shall be supplied through individually metered service connections, except as prohibited by law. The district shall supply and monitor the meters, and submetering does not meet the district's standards. And so the changes that we're proposing are just to clarify that all units shall be supplied through individually metered service connections unless approved by a variance, and to specify that the variances will only be considered in two scenarios, one being technical infeasibility of individual metering, and two being demonstration that individual metering is not beneficial for water conservation in that circumstance. We're proposing changes at this time because we do expect that we're going to see more projects in the future that may be higher density as the city of Capitola and county of Santa Cruz try and meet their housing targets. And we don't have a lot of available land. And so we expect that the projects could have more complicated metering arrangements and challenges than we're used to seeing. Right now, we don't have clear language about variances in the language. And so we think that this change will be beneficial to clarify the limited scenarios that may be considered a valid variance request. And as I mentioned, there's no action for this tonight, but I'd be happy to answer any of your questions and welcome any feedback. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Alyssa. Any public comment on this item?
We have one.
Okay, one raised hand. Let's go ahead.
Ms. Steinbruner, your mic is available.
Hello, this is Becky Steinbruner. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. I think you're wise to be considering this now, and given that this area's state-mandated RENA numbers are set to triple in their requirement of numbers next year, I think we are going to see a lot of this kind of activity. So my question is, what about past variances for projects that have been divided into sub-projects? The example that comes to mind is the Aptos Village project, where I believe the developers were given variance and were granted sub-meters. Did not have to individually meter every single unit. Phase 1 is built. Phase 2, as I understand it, is going to be perhaps beginning the first piece of the three pieces of that. So how will this change affect agreements that have been made given state law? I think that would be wise to consider in your review of your policy here, how it would apply to projects that have extended over a long time, former agreements.
30 seconds.
I think I'm finished. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Board members, let's see. Bruce Daniels, do you have any comments?
Yes, I have a kind of general question about this. I found it kind of strange, this proposal. I mean, it talks about variances, and it lays out two particular variances that I think could be done. But as I understand it, if you're submitting a variance, it could be for anything. You know, I'd like a variance because I'd like to put the building on its side or something weird like that. So why are we singling out these two particular variances? And we're not even approving them. We're just saying if someone wants to submit something with this variance, we'll listen. And we may approve it, we may not approve it. And it says nothing about any other variances that somebody might submit that is close to this or far from this, but so I don't quite see what we're trying to accomplish with this, because variances can be anything, and they certainly have the legal right to request for a variance, and we would always listen. We might or might not approve it, and even these we might or might not approve. So I'm kind of out at sea here, trying to see what the board is accomplishing by this language.
Let me just take a stab at this, and then Alyssa, I'll ask you, just because I think I'm just trying to make sure people know that it's still our policy, that kind of be clear that our policy is still to be individually metered, and the only way to get around that is to have a variance. You may be able to change the wording so that instead it says may be considered due to technical infeasibility, you could say including technical infeasibility and whatever the other one was. And then that's not limiting it. It could be another reason for a variance. Is that, Alyssa, do you want to?
Yeah, I've found personally that talking to prospective projects, especially when they're kind of in the planning phase, they have a lot of questions about metering, and as written right now, our ordinance doesn't explicitly note any sort of flexibility from our individual metering policy. And so this is really just to give them and us a little bit more framework for knowing when a variance would be appropriate. We want new projects to know right off the bat that individual metering is our preference, but that a variance may be considered in limited circumstances.
Okay, thank you. Bruce Jaffe.
Again.
There we go.
I had the same reaction that the other Bruce had, that variances can happen on anything. And so I find this language too restrictive. And Tom, you took a stab out of changing the language. And Alyssa, I get that you want to let people know that there are variances, which is fine with me. But I think maybe examples of variances, if you think it's important to let people know that variances are possible, would be a better wording for this. And I don't even, maybe you can explain to me, when is water conservation not beneficial?
Yeah, that came up as a particular circumstance regarding the affordable housing due to rules regarding tenant billing for affordable housing. in some circumstances, they're not allowed to charge for utilities.
Right.
And so separate metering is not going to grant the same price signal in that case.
I see what you're saying. Okay, it just wasn't clear from that wording. I seem to remember the place on McGregor near State Park Drive was affordable housing, and we worked with them to come up with a metering situation where there was a feedback to the water users. And I'm not sure what the, whether there was any change in the costs associated with that, but I remember us being very flexible, but still trying to meet the goal of having this signal to people. Maybe staff has better memory than I do. But
Dr. Jaffe, this is Ron. I can certainly share that with Shelley and Alyssa. That was 2003, I think, right when I came on board. So they're probably not aware of that specific situation, but we'll share that with them. Thanks.
But yeah, I have no problem with letting people know what variances are possible. But I suggest having it examples, just softening the text. So actually that they know that all kinds of things can be causes for variance. Although I think the other Bruce's example of a building on site is not likely.
Okay.
Yeah, I think this section is maybe a little out of context. It is in the metering section of Ordinance 1701. And so we're specifically talking about variances being possible for separate metering and metering.
Yeah, I get that, but there's all kinds of reasons for variance. We don't want to restrict what somebody might ask a variance for. But I get that you want to give some guidance too. So wordsmithing to convey that there's some guidance, but it can include other things besides this.
Okay. Rochelle.
Now I'm a little confused because I read this as being just specifically for one thing. And that's why it's restrictive. So I guess I thought I was clear on this when I read it, but this doesn't cover any other kind of variance, right? It's just for this particular.
Just
Correct.
for
Correct.
In this section of 1701, the update applicable to separate metering.
Okay.
So we're not touching the overall district variance policy at all. That's still an option for people to apply for a variance for any reason, basically.
And they could do their own private separate metering for the,
no, we don't currently allow that.
when I was in the sanitation district, we requested separate meters for landscape because
landscape's different. Landscape for multifamily and commercial development. Our landscape ordinance requires a dedicated irrigation meter.
Okay.
Currently, so that's addressed through a different ordinance.
okay.
Fine.
All right, Carla.
Oh, yeah, I had a question about the, it said the difference between submetering and metering. And that was the district would own the master meter. Yeah, I forget what page it is. I can't get it on my iPad. And then the owner would read and maintain the tenant meters. Is that too much, or is that backfire on us? The district, that is. I was just trying to, and is that by definition a lot less expensive and a lot easier to do in a a multi-tenant situation. I didn't know how those sub meters would get installed and how that would all work together, because usually the district is very careful about what they what kind of equipment they want to oversee all the equipment that has to do with water on a customer's property and things. So I didn't understand that.
Yeah, so the sub meters are meters that are owned and managed by the property owner, and we wouldn't read them or maintain them. So we would just maintain the master meter. There are requirements for sub metering that they have to be approved by the departments of weights and measures and some other things, so that they are able to measure their water accurately for their tenants. But we would not be overseeing them at all.
And that's not currently an option.
It isn't
for new development, but we do have several existing developments that do sub-metering, some mobile home parks that were built early on, and when we didn't have this separate metering requirement, and they we bill on the master meter, and then they hire a company that actually reads the sub meters and bills the tenants monthly. So I think here we're just showing you this is what traditional sub metering looks like. We're not proposing to allow it wholesale in the ordinance update. We're just giving you information, but it's possible somebody might want to apply for a variance and do a traditional sub-metering setup. And I think the downfall is really, we're not able to isolate leaks as well as we are with separate metering with our AMI system. So that's probably the big fatal flaw in sub-metering.
Okay. I love it when we can get some kind of signal to the people of how much water they're using. So even if they don't pay for it in this new affordable housing thing, I wish somehow I think just knowing how much they use might still be valuable in some kind of sub-metering thing. But in any case, you'll be bringing this back to us maybe with a little bit of change. It looks like several people wanted it not to be completely say these are the only two things that can lead to a variance, but I think everybody's had a chance to have their say. Any other comments from anyone or from staff?
I have some additional things.
Yes, yeah.
Even though this specifically mentions a couple of things, I don't think we should, I think it's misleading, or for me anyway, it's misleading to say there are these two things we've listed here in this update, and you can go off and do them, and it'll be fine, because that's not what I'm signing up for. Even to talk about some of the examples in the past, that is indeed something that happened in the past, and we might consider doing that again, but then we might not consider that again at this point. I mean, some of the people that are currently on the board weren't around in 2003 when we did this 2003 thing, and so the new people might not want it. Even the old people might not want it, because things change, we change, and I think it's misleading to put this thing out and have people think that, oh, okay, since these things are listed, they're kind of quote quote approved unquote, because I don't think they should be. I think it should be a variance, and they should come to the board with whatever they think they can get by, and staff can give them some semi-advice about what they think might or might not work. But to lead people on to think that this is going to work and that's going to work is for one thing, it gets the district in hot water, because if a developer goes out and spends a lot of money assuming that these two listed variances are kind of semi-SOTO approved, and they spend their money and then we say no, they could be really upset. I'd be really upset if you told me that, A and Y can work and B and C can work, and it turns out neither of them work. Whether something, PDQ is what is required. So I think you need to be very careful with this.
So, Director Daniels, perhaps we strike that sentence altogether. Variances may be considered due to technical and feasibility of individual metering, or if individual metering is not beneficial for conservation, as solely determined by the district. Maybe we just strike that altogether from the draft ordinance that we'll be bringing back to you and having a public hearing on.
Maybe the safest thing is to list things that we have done in the past and make it very clear that just because we approved X, Y, and Z in the past doesn't mean we'll approve it today, and leave it at that, because I think otherwise we're leaving ourselves open to having to approve these things that we're not really considering in this. We haven't said that we will do X, Y, and Z because it's a variance, and we would have to talk about it and see how it affects other customers and etc. So be careful.
Ron?
Yeah, I'll just tee off Dr. Daniels. I'm not sure. I think you said at first not to list examples, and that may be. I would argue that may be the right way to go, because my memory was in 2003 was when the board actually transitioned from not requiring to requiring, and it was kind of a compromise with the developer because they were caught in a transition. So, I mean, without the context of that, it could be misunderstood, right? So I think shorter, simpler is better. There's a potential. You probably want to get it done ahead of time, considered kind of thing, if if you're investing money.
Or I was just thinking maybe leaving it, that the district is open to proposals on variances, that result in water efficiency or, saving water efficiency usage and things like that. But it would require a hearing before the board and discussion with staff to, or discussion with staff first and then review it by the board, just like any other variance that we've ever approved. And yeah, because I am kind of uncertain about submetering on a widespread level. I don't know, just, it's, and then individual in these modular home. I don't know. I think we need a more global review of the whole thing first before we have some sort of policy on it.
Yeah, I think, Shelley, your instinct of striking that sentence is correct.
Yeah.
And that, but you've benefited from, both you and Alyssa have benefited from this conversation. So you're in a better position to be able to talk to the applicants about, how the board might consider it or not consider it. And yeah, I think that's the best way to go.
I have an idea. Rather than put this in our policy document, our standards document, why don't we make this not be a board approved thing? Just kind of more like an official, note to developers about these are things that have been tried in the past and you might try it too, rather than stick it in the document where it sounds like it's already been approved.
Well, it's already in the document that it's already in the ordinance that separate metering is a requirement, and it's already part of the district policy that people can apply for a variance. So we're just trying to bring those two things together so that people see there's an avenue around it if it makes sense for their project, I guess.
Yeah. And I think what you're getting at is that we don't have to write examples of what would be considered a variance in this ordinance, but we can still communicate that to the applicant in another way to let them know it's appropriate.
And I do agree with Tom that you want a signal of some type. If price signals are for affordable housing are not legal, you know, some other signal. And I don't know if there's a way to do it, but if there was a way to have AMI be involved with that signal to the perhaps the person who has the main meter. Yeah, I think they would see it in their main meter probably. Strike that. It's not necessary to get too complicated. So, but yeah, it's a changing landscape out there. I think it's wise to get ahead of the curve here because it's coming at us.
All right, do you think you've gotten enough feedback now, guys?
Yeah, it's very helpful.
Thank
Good.
you.
Everybody, thank you for the thoughts on that. All right, so shall we move to our next item? It's 7.3. This is a request for proposals for legislative support in the state this time, not federal government. So who's taking that one?
I'm going to take that one tonight.
Sure.
President LaHue.
Hi, Melanie.
Hi, good evening. I'm here to discuss agenda item number 7.3, which is for the board to consider approval of a release for an RFP to solicit proposals for assistance with state legislative efforts and support. Just as we've done with the federal entities and agencies of having some assistance, we are now looking to the state level. I think as Ron has mentioned, we are in a great opportunity in terms of funding for infrastructure projects, and as noted in the memo, in 2021, the California budget included the $5.2 billion of investment over 3 years to support drought resilience response and long-term sustainability. And now in the 2022-2023 proposed governor's budget, there's an additional $750 million that are available for projects, not just water supply, such as pure water, but also other projects that could provide grant funding for other areas that focus within the district's business services. As we've listed here, for groundwater cleanup and water recycling is one, but also to meet SGMA, to look at water conveyance, drought relief and urban water management, water resilience, drinking water, and wastewater infrastructure. We've been very successful with the efforts that we've done on getting federal funding, and we feel that this is an opportunity for us to solicit some state assistance while this money is coming out and these grant programs are being developed. So I'd like to thank Emma for putting together the RFP that is included in agenda item 7.3 and as an attachment. And we're asking the board, we're here to answer questions, but we're asking the board to approve release of this so that we can see if proposers are interested and then go through the steps to procure with the selection and award to come back to the board on April 5th.
Okay, is there any public comment on this?
There is one, President LaHue.
Okay, let's go ahead.
Ms. Steinbruner, your mic is available.
Hello, this is Becky Steinbruner. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
ma'am.
Thank you. I also am watching the millions and billions and trillions of dollars that various government agencies are making available, and the state of California certainly has a big piece of pie to offer to projects for water infrastructure. I'm reading the report on page 127 of page 154 and see that some of the potential projects that you're District would like to seek grant funding for includes regional water marketing and transfers. I think that's heartening. And I hope that you will work with the city of Santa Cruz. Does the city of Santa Cruz have such a lobbyist on their contract payroll that Soquel Creek Water District could partner with to develop, as I said earlier, a more regional water management scenario and approach? To that end, I would hope that one of the projects you would seek funding for would be to enlarge the intertie connection with
30
the city
seconds.
of Santa Cruz. Thank you. And to also put in purple pipe for recycled water for irrigation of the golf course, the De La Vega golf course, which at a recent meeting where Ms. Schumacher and Ms. Lukenbach gave presentation, the water use for the golf course was projected to decline. I'm hoping that was due to recycled water. So please look at using recycled
Thank you,
water
Ms.
for
Steinbrenner.
irrigation
The time is
and
up.
hope that you get grant funding for.
Okay, any other public comment?
There are no other public members raising their hand.
Okay, so we'll go through, see if board members have thoughts or questions. Bruce Daniels.
I think this is a clear winner. I think we've seen that with our federal issues, that having someone stand up for us is important. So I'd like to go ahead and make the approval of this motion, and not to cut off comment, because we can comment about that as well. But I think this is clearly in our interest.
Okay, thanks. Bruce Jaffe.
Yeah, so there's not a dollar amount associated with this. We're leaving it up to whoever requests. Or was there a dollar amount? I didn't see it.
Right now, this is a request for proposals, so they'll be providing, we have kind of a list of suggested scope of work, and the proposal will include both, their qualifications as well as what they feel their scope would be with a dollar amount associated with that submission.
Okay. And going through the different tasks in the RFP, scope of services on page 131 of 154. It certainly maximize number 3, assist Soquel Creek Water District securing the maximum amount of state funding possible. I think that's a no-brainer. But I wonder about number 4, where it seems like there might not be an immediate payoff in development of annual state legislative program and developing strategies to effectively communicate the impacts of legislative, regulatory, and funding actions on water resources for Soquel Creek Water District. So I don't know if others think the same way, but we're a pretty small fish in a big ocean. But all the more power if we can have an influence on it. But I don't know how large our influence could be. So I'd just be leery of trying to flex our muscles if there's not a chance of it really making a difference.
I can talk to that a little bit if you want, Melanie, or if you like. That's a good point. I would have thought that that would be impossible for an agency like ours. However, 2 things. One, we've seen firsthand, not so much from advocates, but from staff themselves identifying strategically recommended changes and those being implemented by the state that have saved our ratepayers millions and millions of dollars having changes made. So now that we see that, we know that there's others that can see it better than us, even though we were successful. And speaking specifically to Melanie in that case. But the other thing is a lot of this money is coming from the feds through the state. And they haven't completely, our understanding is completely figured exactly how it will funnel through. And so there's another opportunity there to make a difference. And I think that's kind of what we're speaking to there. So it's a bigger opportunity than normal. I guess that's where I'm going.
Okay.
And I think I would just add too, this is part of the proposal process. This is a professional services. So when proposals come in, we can then, select and negotiate the scope. So based upon, what we see would be a best fit for us. I think you've brought up some good points. And I think we can try to right size the services. And, if it's a multi-year, we can, look at that as well in terms of how much assistance or what kind of level of scope on some of these tasks. I will say that one of the things like what Ron is saying is on a federal level, sometimes guidelines are set for all of California, and California has very unique situations. And we have a very unique kind of story. Sometimes it doesn't always fit, some general criteria that comes out. So those are instances where somebody can say, oh, I have an area here that doesn't quite fit that, but the language, and so those are kinds of examples.
Okay. Yeah, I'm all for getting people who do this all the time to help us out, because we've done a great job, you, Melanie, and Ron and others, but it does make sense to get people who do this all the time to help us out. I think it makes fiscal sense as well. Our past record shows that.
Rochelle? Questions or comments?
I was going to look at, is this a 1-year contract?
This would go for potentially multiple years.
Okay.
Up to 3, one with renewals at the end of each year, I believe.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a great idea. And I, of course, believe that you could get all these grants when nobody else did. So I believe you can do this too. I'm like the little engine that could, okay? And so are you, Melanie.
I know you've gotten quite a bit of money when you were at the county.
Yeah, nobody thought I could do that either. So, but you've surpassed me. So anyway, I think this is a great idea. All the help we can get.
Thanks, Rochelle. Carla?
I can only confirm that, support the other opinions before me, and I think we should go forward on this. I know I'm familiar with some other water districts not even out of our state, and that is everyone's trying to find consultants to help with this lobbying thing too, because I think water districts throughout the country now are like realizing how inadequate their facilities are, and they need some help to upgrade them. So we're getting this in just in time. I believe the sooner the better. So,
okay. Excuse me. I'm in agreement as well, because I've seen how well all of our efforts have paid off, and I think in the end it surely ends up helping our customers who were trying to do a big project in a small district, and we've been doing great. But we should keep it up. And there is a once in a blue moon opportunity now with this money coming through. So I'm all for it too, but I guess we have to do that officially. So if anybody would like to make a motion, or
Bruce made it, I'll second it.
Okay, it's a double Bruce Uh, Can we have a roll call, please?
Director Daniels,
Yes.
Vice President Christensen,
Yes.
Director Jaffe,
Yes.
Director Lather,
Yes.
and President LaHue.
Yes, ma'am. And there's a couple items that have April 5th on the date, and I still want to talk about that when we get to the item 4.16 at the end about our timing. But in the meantime, we should probably go to item 7.4.
Right, so this was an item that we did discuss in closed session. The district owns a very small parcel in La Selva Beach that is considered exempt surplus land. The district has no use or future use for this property, and it's basically in someone's backyard, for lack of a better description, with no current access, no way to get to this little piece of property to maintain it. We had an appraisal done last year, and it identified the highest and best use of the property to sell it to the adjoining property owner on the south. And that owner has made an offer on the property, which is what we discussed in closed session.
Anything else, Christy?
I think that's it.
Okay. So any public members have comment on this item?
Yes, we have one raised hand.
Okay, let's go with that.
Ms. Steinbruner, your mic is available.
This is Becky Steinbruner. Can you hear me?
Yes.
This was discussed in closed session, but there was no reportable action from closed session. So I'm a little confused how the board can now be taking action on this item that was discussed in closed session when it was reported nothing happened that was would come of action. For the record, I want to make that clear. I also want to know what the price is that was negotiated. Going to approve this resolution. What is the price of the land? I guess you're not going to answer. So I want to know what the price is of the land, why it was not reported at the end of closed session that there is reportable action that is going to be taken as a result of closed session negotiation. And I would like, I think there should be a map of this parcel. It is not clear from the county assessor database where this piece of property is. There should at least be a parcel map that is included with this
30
resolution
seconds.
for public transparency. Thank you.
President LaHue, is it okay if I briefly respond to some of the issues that were raised in public comment?
Was going to ask you to do so.
Okay, thank you. Just to clarify the Brown Act question. So in closed session, the Brown Act allows us to provide direction to real property negotiators. It actually doesn't allow the board to take action to sell the property in this case, and so that's why it's in open session. No decision, no vote, no action was taken in closed session, so there was nothing to report. If the board decides to approve this sale, that happens in open session, and it'll be by the motion that the board adopts. On that point, you'll note in your packet on page 154, there is a draft resolution, and that draft resolution specifically does not include a purchase price. And if there is a motion to approve this item, staff would request that motion indicate the purchase price. And as a reminder to the board, based on the offer we received, the recommended price is $8,500. Thank you.
Thank you. So board members, Bruce Daniels, do you have anything on this item?
No, I think this is a good thing to get out of our hair.
Okay, Bruce Jaffe,
Same, I agree.
Rochelle,
It's always good to get rid of remnants that you don't need.
okay,
So I agree with this.
okay, and then Carla, I don't see you, but I'm sure you're there somewhere. There you are.
I know the screen is different this time. I don't know. I agree also. We have discussed this, and it is thoroughly agree with staff that it should be moved along.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Okay. And I'll just add that, this is a pretty much completely unusable piece of property. So,
And does the motion include a purchase price, Bruce?
It is for the stated amount that has been proposed.
which was $8,500.
Yes. Yep.
Okay, roll call, please.
Director Daniels,
Yes.
Vice President Christensen,
Yes.
Director Jaffe,
Yes.
Director Lather,
Yes.
and President LeHue.
Yes. All right, well, that takes us to, there were 2 consent items that were pulled. One was item 4.6, and I believe Carla mentioned the mask mandate portion of the report.
Yeah, I also had a question about the 46C, 4.6C also.
Yeah, well, why don't you go ahead.
Okay, so we had discussed the COVID-19 I got health practices, safety practices for the district. And just as we were going to be approving it, the mask mandate has changed. So I just wanted to know whether there would be any changes in the recommendations. And I was thinking that Tracy Hart is much more knowledgeable about that right now, and just to give the board some extra clarification.
So thank you for pulling this item, Director Christensen. We appreciate that. As you recall, and as stated in my Human Resources Management update, and as Josh actually had mentioned earlier tonight, the state of California did ease its mask mandate restriction for indoor. As you recall, back in January, the board actually heightened its mask wearing directive for staff to have some higher standards than those set forth by the Cal OSHA emergency temporary standards and the state mask mandate. So based on the state's easing of the mandated indoor mask wearing for all of California, the County of Santa Cruz followed suit with that based on its own numbers to ease the restrictions for mask wearing. We, as I just mentioned, we heightened our mask wearing and kind of the surge of Omicron. We included not only indoor mask wearing for all employees, but we also included outdoor mask wearing for all employees who were working around others. At this time, I think we did that just as an extra measure of precaution and safety for our staff, especially when we were looking at the crazy numbers that Omicron was really surging and kind of wreaking havoc all over the place. So at this time, I feel very comfortable in at least easing the restriction for the outdoor mask wearing mandate that we put into place, which was a heightened restriction for our fully vaccinated staff. And would love if you had any thoughts or ideas about the maintaining of our indoor mask wearing mandate for staff when we have staff who are working around others. And or if you're feeling comfortable with the state's and our county's numbers in easing the indoor mask wearing. But certainly I feel very comfortable, especially with CDC's guidelines on, transmission of COVID in outdoor settings is definitely much less of a risk, greatly reduced transmission in outdoors, but we did implement that. And we certainly know that as the days are getting, well, we had some really warm days in January and February, but as we move into some warmer weather, some of our staff who are required to work outdoors, our fully vaccinated staff who are required to work outdoors, we certainly know at certain times it's much easier for them to do the work that they do without wearing masks in outdoor settings. So I'm happy to hear your thoughts on continuing with indoor mask wearing. Any thoughts on outdoor mask wearing that might help guide us?
Okay. Thanks. Any questions or board comments on this? Bruce Daniels? Or no, wait, I guess public comment we already had on the consent, I guess. So technically, so, okay.
Personally, Hugh, I would recommend we do public comment on this just because it was pulled from the consent item.
Okay. So is there public comment on this item?
We have one raised hand.
Okay, let's do that then.
I'm sorry, President Lahue, I froze. Are we taking public comment?
Yes, Becca.
Yes, we are.
Hello? Can you hear me? This is Becky Steinbrunner.
Thank you. Sorry, my internet's having wonkiness.
I can hear.
Yes, you can hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. It wasn't quite the same process there, but thank you for allowing public comment. I actually wanted to comment on a different part of item 4.6, but I'm happy that you pulled this, Director Christensen, and for your comments. I am happy to hear that your board did not require a mandatory vaccine for all of your employees. I really appreciate giving your people the freedom of free choice and informed consent. The piece that I wanted to talk about is on page 28 of page 1 of 154 of the packet 154, and that is regarding the letter that Soquel Creek Water District received from the State Water Board, State Water Resources Control Board, urging you to look at consolidation. The gist of the letter is that you look at consolidating with smaller water districts around you. I thought the map was, it was very hard to read from the packet, but it looked like it went all the way up to the summit, which I thought was very bizarre. But I have heard people at your board meetings come from other small water mutuals. I believe Bluff Water Mutual came to you at one point and asked to be consolidated. So it looks like the state is supporting that kind of action and will give $5,000 to $10,000 per connection rebate to you if you do so. This is indeed part of what the county's Water Advisory Commission will be looking at, and I urge you to think of that, but I want to make it clear that Pure Source Water customers have no interest at all in consolidating with.
Thank you, Ms. Steinbrenner. Your time is up.
Okay. Any comments from board members, starting with Bruce Daniels?
I'm glad to see that our staff is staying up on the COVID issues, and so I appreciate that.
Okay. Bruce Chappie.
Yeah, it's a moving target. It's going to continue to be a moving target. What I suggest is that we have policies that change as the facts dictate. So I think Tracy asked, how do we feel about changing the outdoor policy on masks. And I would ask Josh, can we even do anything about a policy as part of this consent agenda, or is it something we have to bring back?
Yeah, so the actual policy itself is something that staff has the ability to implement. So Tracy, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think right now we're just looking for feedback on how you'd like us to move forward.
Yes, just feedback. We definitely have our policy in place, Dr. Jaffe. We have our Cal OSHA mandated worker protection plan. That's a policy that we put in place over a year ago, and we have been revising that policy as things have changed, throughout the last year. And so I definitely know that there was some thoughts and ideas in regards to mask wearing. And as I said, I feel very comfortable in following the CDC guidelines with outdoor mask wearing for our fully vaccinated or the easing of mask wearing for our fully vaccinated employees in outdoor settings when they're working around others or by themselves. But certainly can understand if we want to maintain some of our indoor mask wearing policies as they currently stand for all staff, and maybe even our outdoor mask wearing policies for our unvaccinated workers, and continue to monitor the situation to see how the pandemic is moving forward, because I agree with you, it has been a moving target and it does get confusing when we're constantly changing things. But I think at this point, with the easing of the mask mandate, one place I do feel comfortable is the lifting of our own heightened restriction for outdoor mask wearing for our fully vaccinated employees.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And the one thing we didn't consider last time is what if the health costs go up for if unvaccinated employees get severe COVID, and what's the other thing we didn't consider is what's the impact on our ability to serve water if we lose employees who get severe cases severe cases of COVID if they're unvaccinated. And when we bring this back, and I think we will be bringing it back at some point as things change with COVID, I'd like those to be addressed.
Okay. Rochelle, did you have anything?
I'm just going to keep wearing.
Okay.
End dates are too confusing, but yeah.
Alrighty.
Or I would be comfortable with.
Okay. Carla?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna leave it to Tracy, but we can always reconsider this as Dr. Jaffe mentioned. It is a moving target. Every time we think we're over the hump regarding COVID, another variant shows up. So I'd say let's leave it to our human resources manager and review it again in a couple months when something else comes over the horizon from somewhere.
Thank you. I mean, I agree. I mean, I think Tracy and the rest of the staff know that we want them to be safe and we want our customers to be safe, and the details, we have faith that you'll follow through and take care of everybody. So thank you, Tracy.
But one other thing, Tracy, I'd like to know if there are employees who are impacted by those who don't wear masks, i.e. if they feel they're not in a safe work environment, because that's the flip side. There's those who feel like COVID-19 is not serious and not necessary to vaccinate, But the flip side is those who may either themselves be compromised or be around others who are compromised and don't want to bring COVID to them. So I'd like to be made aware of that side of the story as well.
And under what we just talked about, unvaccinated employees would continue to be required to wear masks in both indoor and outdoor settings.
Good. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. Anybody else have any questions on that item?
Not on that one, but I just wanted to ask a question on 46C and about that very same letter, the letter from the State Water Resources Control Board. And because it looked a little misinformed about our district. And I wondered if we had to respond to that.
So I'll take the lead on this and let Christine get to the specifics. The state, really the place to start is the state sent us a similar letter about other small agencies. It's very hard for a small agency of the sizes that they talked about in the previous one to make it. And that is demonstrated or discussed on another part of this report on page 34. The consortium of water agencies in the Bay Area show a chart there of pressures, upward pressures on cost. Foundation, climate change being a huge one, aging infrastructure, workforce, then up to water quality standards. They continue to improve, and that has a cost on up the line. So, to water efficiency requirements, to GSAs. So with those pressures, they're recognizing that it's almost impossible for a small agency to provide water at affordable rates to their customers. And so that is why the push is there. They're seeing, in some of these places, 4% or so of the paycheck is going to water. And so the state has they've sent letters out, I think, to the city of Santa Cruz to look at like other, like maybe Davenport or ones up the coast. There was a list provided a while back, and I did reach out to those agencies. So that's the big context of that. As it gets tougher to make it in the water world, they're really concerned about the smaller agencies and less affluent people in those smaller agencies. So Christine, did you want to add to about the confusion of the letter at all?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that they apparently, the center of that map is the district's Glenwood property up there in the hills. So where there is no water infrastructure, where it's completely vacant land. So I do have a draft email to notify the sender of the letter that they have a little bit of confusion, but Ron is correct that we did receive a letter earlier a few months ago, similar in nature, and it did have our correct water system identified.
Good.
Okay. And I think I spoke to this person, actually, the signature on the letter, and it's one person doing a big lift, and so they're just trying to cover as much ground as possible. She did appreciate it when I got back to her. It's Christine, so I'm sure she'll appreciate your email because I conferred with her on the last letter.
Oh, good. Okay, that was the essence of my question. So,
great.
Thank you.
Thanks, Carla. And then I just pulled 4.16. We could, if we didn't have a time on there, we didn't have a location versus virtually or in person.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I just didn't know if we should have an opportunity for feedback. And also I was worried about staff trying to put together a workshop for a Saturday the 2nd and have a board meeting on the 5th. So there you go. Options would, if there isn't anything pressing, maybe we don't have to have a meeting on the 5th, or if there is something pressing, do we go ahead and do it on a little part of the second, I don't know. So I just wanted to open that up for everyone to put their input on before we just rolled with that. Both
Yeah,
staff.
we appreciate that, and we want to hear that input. Emma, do you want to add any context about the various options or anything around what Dr. LeHue just said?
I'd only add that one of our directors said that if we were doing it in person, that an outdoor location would be the best option. So the reason we didn't put any proposed times is we have to first figure out if we were doing it outdoors, where that would be, what times that's available. So if it's a virtual meeting, we have a little less constraints with time. So that's why it's to be determined at this point.
Okay, and it's actually after the March 31st end to the emergency status. I mean, it may
Right. So that could definitely play a role if it doesn't get extended.
right. I mean, it may get extended or probably will, but okay, I understand why that's a little bit up in the air. And then who knows? It could rain in April. Yay.
Yeah.
Never know.
And Emma, do you remember? I know we looked at the subsequent agenda, like April 5th or whatever that date is. We considered that, and I can't remember whether it was a heavy agenda or what, but we got our eye on that. We were just going to try to figure it out.
Well, there were two items on tonight's agenda that mentioned April 5th, that they would be coming back on April 5th. So
Yeah, definitely. I know the RFP proposal says that April 5th was our expected deadline for approval. So that was a tentative schedule that can always change. So I know for sure that was on there, and I don't know off the top of my head what the other item was and if that's timely or not.
okay, and I know it's hard to pick a date that everybody can make it. So maybe, and this is probably a fine date, but I just wanted to bring all those things up. So Bruce Daniels, do you have any thoughts, comments on this particular one?
No, I really don't.
Okay, Bruce Jaffe? No?
No comments.
Okay, Rochelle
No comment.
and Carla?
No, I mean, I'll just keep a heads up on the April 5th board meeting. And then the 17th, it looked like the 17th was rather light also.
Okay. And
So
then
if the 5th is more important, then maybe just cancel the
are there
17th.
any raised public hands on this item?
There are not.
Okay.
And so, Dr. President LeHue, I think what we're
just
suggesting is the day be kind of held open for that, because if it's in person, we're thinking an outdoor event, not early morning, because it's usually a little chilly, right? So it'd be like, brunchish, and then if it's virtual, that does give a little more. But if people can hold that day,
okay. Well, so does anybody want to make a motion just to prove that? The motion.
I will. I'll move to approve that day.
Okay, Carla made the motion.
I'll second.
Oh, yeah, I keep muting myself.
All right. So it's been moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Director Daniels? Vice President Christensen?
Yes.
Director Jaffe?
Yes.
Director Lather?
Yes.
And President LeHue?
Yes. And to all, a good night. I think we are meeting adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.